Thank you, Ed. Fox News Alert now. The family of Rayshard Brooks speaking out about his death in an emotional news conference yesterday. A white Atlanta police officer shot and killed the black man during an altercation in a Wendy's parking lot. This all happened last Friday. That officer has since been fired, and the city's police chief has stepped down. Brooks' family saying he did not have to die. Now all eyes are on the district attorney to see if he will file charges against the officers involved in that shooting. Let's bring in our headliner this morning, Chris Stewart, attorney for the Brooks family. Chris, good morning, and thanks so much for being here in America's Newsroom. What can you tell us the family is saying this morning, and what do they want to see happen?
Right now, it's just a lot of pain, dealing with a father of four that's gone, a husband, a brother, a son. So it's a lot of heartache and pain and confusion on what is justice. They're awaiting the DA's announcement of what he's going to do. So it's just a lot of pain.
Chris, our condolences to the family. Of course, we played live the news conference yesterday where you were there, and it was very, very emotional. I want to ask you, though, about the investigation. Do you know the circumstances around why Rayshard Brooks took the taser gun? Because, pardon me, we've had some experts on saying that if you take a taser gun and you fire it, you could incapacitate an officer and then take their weapon, and obviously that would be a bad situation. Law enforcement obviously needs to be able to defend themselves. What do you know about the taser?
Definitely, law enforcement always needs to be able to defend themselves, and we don't know why the confrontation began. What we do know is, talking to his wife, he and his wife watched the George Floyd video constantly, just like all of us in this country, and discussed it and were scared about it. And, George Floyd was in handcuffs and was killed. So I don't know if that triggered him of, I'm about to get put in handcuffs and be helpless, and I'd rather try and get away than be handcuffed and die like George Floyd did. But he ran, he grabbed the taser. He was a distance away. And the officer, Officer Rolfe, was already grabbing for his gun before the taser was even pointed in his direction. And I want to clarify one thing is, we can't wreck the entire use of tasers by police officers. They're used on people constantly. If every time they use it, it is now looked at as a possible deadly situation, that's going to destroy the use of tasers. They're a non-deadly weapon that officers need to use because it's not a threat to your life.
Can you talk about the charges that these two officers face, please, Chris?
We don't know what the DA is going to do, and I never like to comment on the criminal side to not taint anything that's going on. So we're just going to wait to see what the justice does. I don't lose faith in DAs. I don't lose faith in all police officers from this incident. I just want a better way of policing, which shouldn't be that hard.
Chris, and the family was very clear at the news conference I mentioned, you were, and family members were as well, that to honor Rayshard Brooks, you want to make sure the protests are peaceful and it doesn't get out of control. So you just talked about more honest and reformed policing, and you very carefully, it's important to note, said you still respect the police. So if we can have that kind of common ground, the president is about to be in the Rose Garden in the next couple of hours announcing some steps forward. What kind of police reform do you think we need in this country, sir?
A lot of policies and different procedures are being announced, but it's the mentality part. There is a problem with policing and African Americans, with temperament, with aggression, with understanding that needs to be fixed from the beginning. So looking at it that way, a lot of officers that I even know, they don't want to respond to a drunk call or a mental health issue that isn't violent. There needs to be a separate department with the crisis intervention training, which gets made into a department that they handle all that. And our officers that are armed and trained, they respond to the violent situations. They don't have to be put in these kind of situations where they don't want to be. You even hear the first officer on video get in his car and say, I don't want to deal with this. They shouldn't have to. There should be a separate department that deals with community situations like this.
Chris, we've also heard the first of the audio from the 911 phone call when police were first called over Rayshard Brooks, stopped there in the car. The caller said that he was asleep and kind of woke up and looked at the person at the drive-thru. What have you and the family been able to take away so far since that call was made public?
The call in the video, sadly, it's how you're taught as an African American to respond when a police officer questions you. He was polite. He was cordial. He called them sir. The first interaction was what you're supposed to do with an officer, sadly, because you're scared that it's going to get aggressive if you raise your voice or do something like that. And then it went sideways. But at the end of the day, he shouldn't have been shot in the back 2 times for having that taser, which is used often all the time on people because it's not a deadly weapon.
Chris, Tiara Brooks is the cousin and was one of the many family members I mentioned. She's quoted as saying, "The trust that we have with the police force is broken. The only way to heal some of these wounds is through a conviction and a drastic change with the police department." That part of the quote about the only way to have justice here is a conviction. We have to wait for the facts, though, in this case, right? Because as you've been hedging some of the details, we don't know all of the facts about what led to this awful tragedy.
No. We just know the ending, which is always the most important, is, 2 bullet holes in his back directly, not sideways, not in his chest, while running away. And we also see the officer reaching for his lethal weapon before the tasers even pointed in his direction. This just shouldn't have happened. At that situation, you can let him run, catch him, you have backup coming. You have his ID, you patted him down, you know he's not armed. You have his car. Taking a life should not be such a quick option when you know he has a taser.
Chris, we were all watching that news conference live when it happened yesterday, and our viewers took that all in together. The family members stepping up one by one to the microphone, obviously you speaking as well. You had to take over at the end because the family got so emotional. They walked out of the room. But we heard from the niece, cousins, obviously his widow, his children. Can you just let us know how they're doing and how they plan to proceed in the days and the weeks that follow all of this?
Yeah, it hit the family, and you even heard his niece talk about it, is they were part of the group that was telling people to not destroy Atlanta and not burn things down when those protests were happening a few weeks ago. And they stood up for, Zone 3 where they are, and were saying, don't be violent. And then this happened literally right after that. So it was kind of a crushing blow for them when they felt like telling protesters and telling people to protest without any violence. And then this happens. Same thing. I mean, burning down property and tearing up the cities, that doesn't make any sense with protesting. And if you look at most of the video, it's not all of the peaceful protesters out there. It's always 3 or 4 crazy individuals who escalate the situation. A lot of them aren't even always African American. So, we just have to be careful with what people say is violent protest, because it's not anything that the families are taking part in, that we're taking part in, and that most people that want change take part in, because that doesn't solve anything.
All right, Chris Stewart, we certainly appreciate your time. Our condolences again to the family, and we hope that you'll come back, sir.
Anytime.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
All right.
Fox News Alert.